On this episode of Dive Charter, we revisit the war on an old nemesis, the lionfish, to see what progress is being made.
Scientists were not even alarmed. They were like, well, it's such a fragile fish, chances are it's not going to be able to get established. And so wrong we were in that prediction.
Us divers, we can't be everywhere, so we still have sites that aren't being visited and the populations continue to increase.
As effective as these tools are and the divers are, we're barely putting a dent in this population explosion.
If we don't get a control of the lionfish, a lot of the fisheries that we've grew to really enjoy and love are going to be severely in trouble, I believe.
You may remember from last season's show on lionfish that there's a battle being fought to save the reefs from this invasive predator.
One of the things we're most concerned about with this invasion is the impacts that lionfish are going to have through their predation on our native marine life. Lionfish are voracious predators, and some recent research is showing that the impacts they're going to have may be very dramatic.
They've been noted to consume over 120 different species on this side of the planet. So non-discriminate, gluttonous feeders.
I've noticed from what they eat and the devastation that they could put forth on the reefs, not only in South Florida but in the whole Caribbean, it kind of became important for me to do what I could to try and alleviate the problem.
As the dive boats head out for a day of lionfish hunting, we wonder, is the battle against the invasive lionfish really working? Are divers, using their various hunting and live capture techniques, really having an impact in the effort to control this invader?
Us divers, we can't be everywhere, so we still have sites that aren't being visited and the populations continue to increase.
As effective as these tools are and the divers are, we're barely putting a dent in this population explosion.
If we don't get a control of the lionfish, a lot of the fisheries that we've grew to really enjoy and love are going to be severely in trouble, I believe.
When we return, we'll talk to some local lionfish experts who will tell us about their ideas for controlling the lionfish invasion using methods other than divers. And we'll catch up with our local lionfish hunting teams to see how they did. This episode of Dive Charter is brought to you by ScubaDoRag.com, Clifton Design Group, and by our supporters, David and Karen Barkley, Dennis DiCristofaro, Susan Clifton, Dawn Richards, and Terry Simpson. On the way to the dive site, we asked some of the lionfish divers why they were here today.
Lionfish are so devastating to the reefs here and everywhere else that we thought, well, let's see what we can do to catch them.
My record so far is 62 fish in one dive off of an area just off of Belize City.
We've gone a couple lionfish hunts so far. We were collecting for my research at Nova Southeastern.
So with all the hunting and capturing of live specimens, are divers having an impact at all on the lionfish invasion?
As effective as these tools are and the divers are, we're barely putting a dent in this population explosion. I'm Bob Hickerson. I'm co-founder of Team Frapper. We've been hunting these bad boys since 2009. Lionfish were first noted and reported back in 1985 off the Florida coast. Since then, the reports became more and more frequent from not just Florida, but up the east coast of the United States, filling in around all of the Caribbean islands now, as well as the Gulf of Mexico and Central America. And there's even reports of them being noted down the South American coast heading southbound. They're an absolutely stunning fish to have in an aquarium. They're magnificent specimen. But they'll eat pretty much anything you put in that aquarium without regard. I think the latest research numbers are they've been noted to consume over 120 different species on this side of the planet. So non-discriminate, gluttonous feeders.
If we don't get control of the lionfish, a lot of the fisheries that we've grew to really enjoy and love are going to be severely in trouble, I believe. My name is David Ventura. I'm the Whole Foods Seafood Coordinator for the state of Florida. There's millions and millions of lionfish out there. They live as deep as 1,000 feet, which is very problematic because currently we harvest them with our local scuba divers, and they spear them one by one. And obviously a diver doesn't have the capability or technology to dive that deep. So the lionfish have a large area of the ocean that they're not even being touched yet.
Divers have been doing a pretty good job of keeping the local reefs clear on the sites that are frequented most often. Now, however, there's sites that are not visited too terribly often at depths of 60, 80, 100 feet even, and beyond that are not getting cleared on a routine basis. We're limited somewhat, a great deal actually, by depth. 100 feet is probably about the most comfortable that most of us recreational divers can handle for any length of time, and even that's somewhat limited. 20 minutes maybe max, and so we're limited as to how many lionfish we can get on a particular dive.
When we learn about the lionfish and their diet, how much they could consume, and the fact that they have no natural enemy, it is a very serious problem out there. And we want to make our customers and the public at large very aware of the situation, because we need more people to be part of the solution.
When we return, we continue our discussion with our lionfish experts. We learn what other uses and markets there are for lionfish. And we check in with our lionfish divers to see how well their hunts went. This episode of Dive Charter is brought to you by ScubaDoRag.com, Clifton Design Group, and by our supporters, David and Karen Barkley, Dennis DiCristofaro, Susan Clifton, Dawn Richards, and Terry Simpson. So far in this episode, we have learned that the lionfish invasion has gained momentum, despite divers on the reefs using their various methods to kill or capture lionfish. So what else is being done to help win the war? David Ventura of Whole Foods Market tells about one thing that is being done.
Whole Foods got started selling lionfish January of 2016. And how that became about is we're affiliated with the Monterey Bay Sea Aquarium from California. And we work with them as one of our partners in our wild seafood sustainability color ratings. We discovered in January of 2016 that the lionfish were color rated green, which means it's very, very sustainable. So once we learned that process has taken place, I started sharing that new color rating list with some of our team members. And we had some very passionate team members who were very excited to find out that lionfish was now color rated green, and we have the opportunity to sell it. And we start with 3 test stores. And the test stores we selected were Sarasota on the West Coast, Boca Raton, and Fort Lauderdale. And the response was overwhelmingly positive. A lot of our customers were very familiar with the species and the situation that is at hand with the lionfishing environment. So I found that response to say, you know, we need to sell this in all our stores. So within 1 to 2 weeks, we ramped up harvest and we started selling in all 26 stores. And I'm very, very happy to say that since we started selling lionfish, we have sold over 36,000 pounds of lionfish through our stores in Florida. And that is only the stores in Florida. Not only are we selling lionfish, but local restaurants have found out about the lionfish. And slowly but surely, a local restaurant will start to put them on their menu also. And that's really, really good because now we have a farther reaching effect other than us just selling the lionfish.
Now that Whole Foods has teamed up with local divers to sell lionfish in their stores, what other methods can be used to slow down the lionfish invasion? Bob Hickerson of Team Frapper explains.
So given the fact that scuba divers are limited in a number of different ways in terms of depth and time to spend underwater, we also, during the same time periods, we noticed that lobster fishermen, fish trap fishermen throughout the Caribbean were picking up lionfish as bycatch in their traps when they'd pull them. They weren't going out looking for them specifically, but they'd pull them up as bycatch. To such a great extent that the lobstermen in the Keys for the last 5 years or so have been making a pretty decent side living bringing the lionfish to the market. With that in mind, a couple of years back, we here at Team Frapper decided to work on developing a trap, as are a few other groups throughout the affected area. We see trapping as having great potential for the commercial implementation of removing lionfish in the very near future.
Traps are useful tools because they work 24/7 and can be deployed well below the depth limits of recreational scuba divers. Inside one of the Team Frapper research areas, Bob and Maria tell us about their trap program.
Loaded with lionfish.
How's everybody doing today? So what we have here are 5 live specimens that Maria and I have captured off the Florida coast. We occasionally go after live specimens for our own research purposes as well as other researchers. These 5 here in our current tank are supporting our work for a behavior study, which ultimately will result in a lionfish-specific trap.
Despite the fact of being fish, they have different preferences. This is how we sort them out. We try to see the preferences for individuals and as a species. So our ultimate goal is to create a trap that is very attractive to any lionfish. And these guys are helping us.
We are targeting a trap that would have no bycatch, 0 bycatch. Once we've obtained that, we'll have something very unique. It's never been done before. We're in the final stages of doing dry or desktop version testing. The computer program has already been written by Gonzalo, Maria's dad, a retired physicist. It is a pattern recognition program that can identify lionfish over all other marine species. We will have a small onboard computer, camera, and a small motor that will operate a gate system that will allow only lionfish to enter this trap.
It seems the anti-lionfish movement has a lot of momentum, with divers, seafood markets, and trap developers all stepping up to fight the invasion. But is it going to be enough? Maria of Team Frapper has another suggested use for lionfish.
So this fish is a problem. It's a big problem. We already hear why. And what do we do with the fish once it's caught? Well, it's a big problem. And the good thing about it, the thing that have against them, is that they're very tasty. Very, very tasty. So because of that reason, we've been putting it on different markets like Whole Foods and such, and they are delicious. But there's so much fish I can personally eat. So to add some value to this fish, I was thinking, what else can we do with the fish? And we came up with a good idea and a good method to dry out just the tails. I'm not messing with any venomous spines. And once they're dry and coated with acrylics, I'm putting them into jewelry. And I may be the starter of this, but now it's all spread. It's becoming a trend for sure. So lionfish jewelry, it's also a really good way to go. If you like it fish or not, there's something else you can get and help a little bit with this invasion.
When we return, we will hear some final comments from David Ventura of Whole Foods Market, and we'll get an update from our lionfish divers. This episode of Dive Charter is brought to you by ScubaDoRag.com, Clifton Design Group, and by our supporters, David and Karen Barkley, Dennis DiCristofaro, Susan Clifton, Dawn Richards, and Terry Simpson. In this episode, we have learned that the battle against the lionfish invasion is still going on, and despite divers doing their part, the area of infestation continues to grow. But now divers have help from seafood markets, restaurants, trap developers, and even jewelry makers, putting a larger dent in the lionfish population and controlling some of the damage these invaders can cause. Here's David Ventura with some final words from Whole Foods Market.
Our team members are very, very well trained for food safety and how to handle and process the lionfish. The lionfish are venomous and it's their spines. However, the meat is perfectly safe. So what we do here in our departments, we remove all the spines before the lionfish goes to the consumer, so it's 100% safe to eat and consume. Our region, our Florida region, has put together some recipes that's available on our website. They're very, very simple. It's not very hard to prepare a lionfish, but we do provide that service to our customers. What I'd like to do is expand that scope to invite more people in to our fish counters, and we will happily discuss the lionfish problem, solution. It's a problem that we need to get a grip on, and we're very, very honored and privileged to be part of it.
And now, let's check in with our lionfish divers and see how they did.
It was a good day of lionfish hunting. We have a couple pounds, which will make a great meal. This one will fillet. I think I have 4 or 5 will fillet, and four that will maybe cut whole. Anything below 8 inches.
Nice. Look at this, 6-inch spines.
This afternoon we dug the backside of the reef, about 75 to 85 feet. And we got lions anywhere from 2 to 3 inches up to probably 15, maybe some 16s. We got some big ones back there. It was a real good day. Everybody had a good time. And just as much as they had a good time, they took some lionfish off the reef. Hopefully they'll slow it down a little bit and put an end to this problem. Every little bit adds up. Maybe one day they won't be here anymore.
On the next episode of Dive Charter, one of the few drawbacks to living and working in South Florida is hurricane season. Roughly 10 years have gone by with no major storms making landfall, and now it looks like one is headed directly for us.
We have a 3 or 4, category 3 or 4 hurricane coming, so we need to get ready. That means we have to take everything off the boat, take everything off the dock, make sure nothing will be flying away, and make sure everything will be here when we come back resuming our activity. So it's going to be a busy morning, and hopefully we just have to hope for the best.